Chair. Minister, can you confirm that you have awarded a 10-year, $400 million contract for the management of the Rural Fire Service to a Canadian company called Coulson's? And can you also confirm that the tender was open publicly for 6 weeks over the summer holidays at the beginning of last year? And is that time frame standard for awarding of a contract so large?
Mr. Ruddick, just to clarify, so it wasn't for the administration of the RF, just specifically for aviation. Yeah, and it was a 5-year and a 5-year contract, and yes, I can confirm that. Commissioner Rogers, it was a 6 week. It was an open tender.
Yeah.
And is that a 6 week tender?
Whatever the period was that we were required by procurement guidelines,
yeah. we worked within the procurement guidelines.
Well, industry is very concerned it was only a 6 week period, and it was only, I think it opened in like the first week of January. And there was a contract awarded by the federal government for the helicopter services in Antarctica recently, and they had a 3-month open tender process. So I think some of the local operators felt like they weren't really given an open opportunity. Do you think that's fair?
Well, Mr. Ruddick, I mean, we worked within the guidelines that are there for us, which is the state procurement guidelines. That would be the first step, that everything was done in relation to that. In relation to what the federal government did, you'd appreciate that it's not my place to speak about what they do.
Yeah.
Can I go back to one of the reasons why we've also made sure that we've tried to secure aviation? We need this, and we need something long term. We continue, even with this Coulson contract, to work with local operators. But if we ever think about what occurred just recently in Los Angeles, post Los Angeles, the United States have now tried to tie up pretty much all of the available aviation aircraft to support that. Well, we've also got situations where fire seasons in the past used to pretty clearly defined. They now overlap. So this is about making sure that we've got the resources that we need, given that we will have fire seasons that extend for a long period of time.
The bushfire inquiry after those bad fires 5 years ago did say that the local operators did a good job. So I'm still confused why we had to outsource it to Canada. But are you aware that when the contract was approved by yourself, that Coulson's was under investigation by the Australian Transport Safety Bureau for 2 of the worst fatal firefighting crashes we've had in recent history? That's the one in Cooma, and that is the one in Western Australia.
And I believe that there was a report that's been handed down with Cooma.
Yes, well, that report was being prepared while you issued them the contract, so it was still in play.
Mr. Ruddick, the tender went out openly to everyone who was willing to apply. People were aware that there was a tender. We need to make sure that we have the best possible protection that we can for our state. We currently own a large air tanker. We're the only state that does it. We own a Chinook. We're the only state that does it. But as we've just seen in recent fires across the state, and I'm so grateful because we're able to see the use of our aviation to support people on the ground, I need to make sure, as the Minister, and I think that anybody would like to know, that we've got every possible resource at that. As part of the contract, as an example, there was also an element that had to involve local work, local training.
Yes,
so
but
that
the local work has been very significantly reduced. You would agree with that, haven't you? And we're talking about at least 24 operators, good, thriving businesses, which has had a very good relationship with the RFS for several decades. And now those operators are in serious strife because we've given $400 million to a foreign company.
Mr. Ruddick, you'd appreciate we're still using and we're still working with our local operators. Indeed, we have throughout the summer. I think businesses. That's right. What I need to be very, very conscious of is making sure that when a fire happens, we've got the resources that are in place. And I'm comfortable that in New South Wales we do the very best that we can to make sure that we've got those resources. It was an open tender, and that open tender was available to everybody to be able to put in I suppose a bid. Now, Coulson put in the successful bid, and as a result of that, we're able to secure their services. There's been, just to give you an example of how it would work, we need to procure, even like with all of our locals, we still need to procure aerial fleet at different times of the year. These are becoming much, much more difficult to procure, much more expensive to procure. and other places are starting to just tie them up. We're actually in a good place in New South Wales with that. I'm happy to make sure that, I have to use the public, obviously the responsibility is, the public funding to be used in the best way possible. This is the best way possible. For some of the specifics, I'm happy for the Commissioner to elucidate a bit more on some of the specifics that you're referring to, but I'm confident that we continue to use and continue to work with local operators, and that we've done the best that we can to ensure the safety of the people of New South Wales, particularly when it comes to fire season.
Okay, so Minister, when you did award that very large contract to Coulson's, and there was CASA was investigating these two crashes simultaneously. Now, you're right that CASA has now delivered that report, and the Sydney Morning Herald in January this year summarised those reports, and this is what it found about Coulson. It said the investigation found that Coulson Aviation's safety risk management processes did not adequately manage the risks associated with large air tanker operations, and that there were no operational risk assessments conducted or a risk register maintained. Now, then CASA went on to complain that a lot of their safety records are held in British Columbia. And so those reports were, there's been two crashes, and CASA has said, look, we're not thrilled about the safety record of this company. Is that a concern to you, Minister?
I think anybody would be concerned about safety, but Mr. Ruddick, I go back to this. There was a process, and people and companies were allowed and enabled to be able to make a submission. Now, I don't know whether some of the contractors you've talked about made a submission or not, but obviously when it's
well, they said that they just didn't have the time, and it was as though the tender process was not friendly towards local submissions.
Well, look,
that is the strong evidence, that feedback I'm getting from the industry.
Well, as I said, we continue to work with local industry. I think there's 22 contracted aircraft. I think we've got an availability of up to 230 aircraft. When I'm dealing with a fire that's potentially spreading across the state, I want to make sure that we've got all the resources that we've got there, Mr. Ruddick.